My name is Gregory Dirr. I'm an interdisciplinary visual artist, and what I mean by that is that I do all of the disciplines. I paint, sculpt, I do printmaking, but I also do the weirder things like installations, sound art, art that uses light, and music, animation, pretty much textiles, pretty much anything that is in the realm of my creative thinking at that time. I want to be a part of it.
When did you realize that was it for you, this multidimensional approach to art? Because let's say, some people focus more on one specialty of art.
I would say that that's more of like a biographical family thing for me in particular, because we never really had a lot growing up as far as like money and stuff like that, and I'm one of four brothers, so we come from this family of like build it or fix it. So nothing is broke, you just fix it over and over again. Like my mom has a pot that she loves. I've fixed it like 17 times because she's always like, oh my God, my pot. And my dad's a carpenter. My grandfather, he makes fine jewelry, and to the point where he polishes raw stones. Yeah, so he's making faceted stones from nothing. My grandmother's a seamstress, like she's made wedding dresses, made silk dresses, like things that are ridiculously hard to do. So ever since I was just a baby, I kind of had this in my mind that, oh, you can make this because people have made it. So everything, like the couch, this bicycle, at one point it was made by a human. So I just kind of always ran with that way of thinking that I could do it myself. And I think that that bled into it. Like, at the start, it was always, visual art, like drawing, painting, stuff like that, right? But the more and more I realized I could do things like making frames or stretching my own canvas or, fill in the blanks, I realized like I could just do all of this. And then what is painting? Is it just a 2D thing, or could it be more? And then I just started diving more and more into that, and I started to realize that it was viable as far as like getting paid for it is. Because you think, oh, it's easy to get paid for selling your paintings or painting a mural, but could you possibly get paid for installations? And yes, you can. Could you possibly get paid for sound production? Yes, you can. So there's just all these avenues, and it seemed like I'd be selling myself short if I didn't do them all. And as far as like the biographical side, I've always done art. Like I was mentioning my family, it wasn't really a career until I started to get into college, and it was like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life type of deal? And then I was like, well, I should probably do the one thing that I'm really, really good at, And of course that was a struggle at the beginning of like not only finding my path of how do I make money or how do I make a career out of this, but also like convincing my family members. Because even though we're all artisans, there's that care of like how you going to, support yourself, how you going to make a living and all of that. So I mean, I still think that that's an everyday thing that even I have to do inside of myself. But long story short, it's kind of just what I've always done, And matching that with my career was just, I feel like, part of the process of finding out who I am as an artist.
It's so well put. I see it for myself when I make the frame, when I stretch the canvas, when I go to the store, buy the tools. I feel not only, it's not that I'm making a better product, maybe I am, but I feel like I am just doing so much more, and I feel like I am learning and getting better also.
Oh yeah.
The more I do almost all of it.
And it's like, it becomes a part of you, like the art, you touch it, your skin flakes get on it, your hair, your oils, and like then that's in everything, not only just the fabric of the canvas that you stretch, but the frame as well, and the paints and everything. That's literally a you object, you know what I mean? So like all art is an extension of yourself, but some of it, like when it's like what you or I are doing, is a literal extension of yourself. Without you in the equation, it wouldn't exist, In school, it was just something I always did. I did a lot of like graffiti, like vandalism for a while when I was a very younger kid, to the point where like one of my teachers just knew I was gonna do it. So he would, at the beginning of class, give me like a cleaner that would clean off ink and just be like, here, you can draw all over this desk so long as you clean it up afterwards. And then 5th grade, I was getting in trouble for having notebooks and all it was notebooks full of drawings and stuff. But they're like, oh, you need to pay attention in class. So just stuff like that. Like if there was a group project, I'd be the art boy. You know what I mean? So it was just that thing that I've done. And then in high school was that like eureka moment, like, oh no, I gotta go to college and be like a real person. And at that point, I already had like a paying mural. It wasn't a lot of money. It was $500, but for like a kid in high school, that's whoa, oh my God, I could spend all this money. So it just kind of clicked like, oh, not only can I make something out of this, but it's something that I'll like enjoy doing and not get burnt out and go crazy one day, you know.
Absolutely. Now, where did you go to school? Is it?
I went to high school here. It's called Olympic Heights,
Okay.
and they had a really good art department just because there was a couple. They're called the Nice Winders, and they kind of just like spearheaded the art department. So everything was theirs. Like you had to take slides back in the day, you know, to do your portfolio reviews. So the husband was a photographer. He did all the slides. You didn't have to go and get paid for. The wife she knew about digital art, and this was way early. This was like Photoshop 1. So I was learning Photoshop back when Photoshop sucked. It was a lot of it had to do with them. I have to give them props for being amazing teachers. And then after that, I went to Ringling College of Art and Design. It's on the West Coast in Sarasota. It wasn't my first choice. I wanted to go to Pratt and go to New York and be in like the thick of it, but it was just a money issue. It was way easier for me to move in state, you know, and like live at a cheaper apartment, like just stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And I still loved it. It's not like it was a bad school by any means. Our faculty was, oh my God, our faculty was like, if you start researching their work, you're going to be like, uh-oh, I need to be better, you know, because they're all like, boom, like contemporary artists, like real contemporary artists. So that was really like kind of encouraging just to know that these people are giving me their expertise, and I still use it today. Sometimes people don't want to hear the things I have to say about what my professors say. Huge thing for me is upcycling, recycling, and conservation. I'm also like big nature boy, which is why you'll see a lot of like flowers and Florida nature in my stuff. So, but also it's a like a moral decision that I need to recycle in my things, because the way that I look at it is like, I'm an artist. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So if I can figure out a way to make less of an impact by what I'm doing, because of course, there's always going to be something brand new you need to buy. Like I need to get the gold leaf, that's brand new. I can't recycle that. I need to get the seal in. I need to get my acrylics and stuff like that. I always got to buy that. So if I can make the surface recycled, if I could, you know, make, this is very obvious because this was a prompt by Resource Depot. You're using recycled materials, but even in all my other work, whether it's the canvas was an old blanket, the stretcher bars was an old frame, I just feel like it's a moral obligation for me to make less of a bad impact through my art. And I would say that that cues a lot of what my work is about. So let's say I'm going into a project, right? I already know I'm going to make a painting, but I find a material, right? Maybe I didn't know exactly what the painting was going to look like until I see that material, whether it's plexiglass or styrofoam, or I'm painting on an old cigar box or something. That's going to cue me on what my imagery needs to look like, not just how the final presentation is going to be, but like I need to change the imagery. I need to change how I paint it, the painting style. And I think that that's a big reason why my work is all over the place, imagery-wise, is because I want what I'm doing and what I'm doing it on to cue the art, and vice versa, you know, like, because we already have our ideas. We have a million ideas. So we could just, to the end of time, just paint paintings on canvas, you know what I mean? But where is really the growth, especially for people like you and I who are doing wild things, you know? It's kind of just like, okay, you know, at the end of the day, those are paintings on stretched canvas, you know?
I do hear you very clearly. I see myself a lot of times when I paint, the ideas do come all over the place, but I do like the idea of taking from nature. I love flowers. So for instance, even though my stuff is on the abstract side of things, but in a way I like to hide stuff in there. So,
oh, yeah.
So when you mention nature, I can definitely relate to nature, put stuff in there. And sometimes people will say, oh, wow, I see this. You know, it's a fish or a flower, but half the times no one sees it, and that's okay too.
That's awesome. That's what I love about abstractions, because people are like, oh, this isn't realism, right? But it is. It's like the realism of the soul, you know, that's the way that I look at it. If you're doing it right, which yeah, you are.
It's definitely so true. Now I know when I got here, you were working on this bike. So why don't you keep working, and then we'll just document some of that, and then we'll come back, and then I have some more questions for you.
Okay. Love the chain guard. The chain guard, this was originally painted on there, and then I cut it out because, you know, got to be extra. So not only did I do the painting, but I also kind of like refurbished it a little bit. So I took all the parts apart, cleaned them up, things that needed to be replaced, like the chain. I replaced the chain completely, just stuff like that.
Okay, so we're back. We're going to take a look at some of your work, and this looks remarkable. I love the lines, how my eyes are being drawn in, but while I'm in, there's even more stuff after. So why don't you just talk to me here? When was this done? What was the inspiration behind it? I think I know, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, so I was working on it for a long time. So it took me maybe 5 years, not to complete it, but just because, you know, sometimes you work on a painting on and off and you're not, you know, you're working on multiple projects, so you don't have time to finish this. And this was more of a passion piece. So I'd say it was officially done around like 2022 when I got everything, you know, the frame and all of my little finishing touches done with it. But it's, you know, The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. And all the characters are part of a book that I've been writing for the past 10 years. Probably more than that, probably 15, because some of the characters, they go way back. They're characters that I drew when I was a kid, and then I found drawings of them, and I was like, oh my God, these are amazing. I need to reinvent them. And then snowball effect, it just became this whole bigger thing. And by this point, I have almost a full narrative. I just need to sit down and write the book. The reason why I have a couple of pieces that I'd consider master copies, but the reason that there are master copies is because in the world of the big book, that's the title of the book, it's called The Big Book, there is no real connections to our real world, except for very few things. One of them is that they find all these paintings in a cave, and all the paintings in the cave have resemblances to paintings from our real world. So that's where these master copies come into play, with the exception that all of the people or the figures in it are the characters from the story. So this would be one of them. The reason I chose the little girl character to be the Jesus Christ character is she is basically that. She is the main character of the story, like the unofficial main character of the story, and she's kind of the god of this world. She can do anything. She can change it from night to day, make it raining, make multiples of herself, change her form, her hair, her outfit, make things that are extensions of herself. She's basically like the all-powerful being of this world. And in a sense, the world is also an extension of her. So I felt it was just appropriate.
It's so awesome. Now, some of these characters, you mentioned that they were characters from when you were a child?
Yes.
Now, when you were doing this as a kid, you were basically, I'm assuming, just kind of drawing mostly. You wasn't really...
Oh, I didn't start painting until I was in college, which I always reference that to people who think they have too late of a start at art, is that I'm really well known for my paintings. That's kind of what people know me for, and my color usage. I didn't start taking paint to canvas until I was almost in my 20s, and I didn't even know how to mix colors till then. Everything was out of the tube. So all of this was in the later half of my life so far. So I mean, anybody can paint if they sit there and they give the effort to do it, considering, like I said, that's kind of what I'm known for. And I didn't really start painting until very recently. It was all drawing. You know, especially as a kid, you're obsessed with cartoons and comic books and video games and stuff like that. If you see the little blue character, I call him the triangle guy, but you can't see his full body. All he really was the Superman logo with eyeballs on it. You know, as a kid, you do that. Same thing as the heart with eyeballs on it. I feel like that's a thing that everybody's done. The diamond with eyeballs on it, right? They're just very simple symbols, if you will, that people can recognize, and even if they don't realize that they recognize it. And I mean, symbolism in and of itself is a huge thing. So symbolism and iconography, I feel like as artists, especially visual artists, that's what we're doing. Like that we're diving into that world. And whether it's personal, whether it's religious, historical, and we're referencing or not referencing it, or we're creating it in real time, I feel like that's what we're doing. So for me, I just lean into that, and I understand that that's what I'm doing, and I almost want to get past it to these almost like superhuman symbols. That's why I chose things that seem childish, like the heart with eyeballs on it, right? Let's just use that one for example. It's not even an anatomical heart. Hearts don't look like that, but anybody from age 2 to 102, they see that and they understand and recognize that it's a heart. It doesn't matter your background, your language you speak, where you're from, you see that, you know that it's a heart. So what's the next step? You put eyeballs on it and you're humanizing this thing. Why do we do that? Why do we see these symbols as other things? Why are they so recognizable to us? And then why do we want to humanize things? I don't know. These questions to me, whether or not they're answerable, I don't really care. I just feel like there's something human in that. And like the iconography, lore, we're obsessed with lore and storytelling. I feel like right when a story starts being told, we need to know the end of it. And that's kind of a very human thing for us, is that like, even if it's something that's dark or like melancholy, we're still just like, well, what happens? Like, what is this? So I don't know, for me, like I said, I just leaned into it. I knew that that's what I was doing. So not only do I want to do it, I want to do it extremely, to the degree where it's almost like vomitous, like this is just symbols in my face. Even to the point when I'm doing abstractions, that's the way that I look at it, is like we're creating symbolism, whether people realize it or not. Whether that's important to me, sometimes it is. I think it's important when it is, and it's not when it's not. So when somebody really recognizes it, and I feel like that it relates to them and their life and their journey or whatever, then it's important. But if somebody is just like, meh, and they overlook it, I don't really care, you know what I mean? Because it's still there. I like a little halfway point between that. I like for the audience to insert it themselves into the narrative, but then I also like to control the narrative, but not too much. It's almost like Venn diagrammy, you know? I don't want to be this holder of what I think my meaning is, you know? Because sometimes I don't know, you know? What if somebody looks at a piece and they unlock this part of it that I didn't even know was real, but it's so real to me, and in that moment, it becomes what my piece is about. What, am I going to be upset that it wasn't exactly what my intentions were? No, of course not. And for me, the cathartic thing, the like, this is why I make art, that's in the making of it, you know. The showing it's great and all, I love it, but it doesn't really do that same thing for me that the making of it does. Once it's done, it's done. So I don't know if this is relevant to it, but the selling of art and the coveting of it, I don't really have that. I love it when people like it, especially after the fact, because I'm done with it, you know what I mean?
Recall not too long ago, I was speaking with a gentleman, and then he said, "You know what? I like your art." And I always ask people, "Well, why do you like it?" And then he was telling me how one character reminded him of his wife, or he see himself dancing with her. And let's face it, that was my first time meeting the gentleman. That was my first time meeting his wife. So, and I was so pleased and felt honored that someone saw themselves in my work. And so art art is very powerful and symbolism is very powerful. Even as a child, there's symbols everywhere. So our whole lives are full of symbols.
This piece here is another piece from the big book that is the same character as in the Da Vinci copy. The little girl is what I call her. And this is a perfect example of what I was talking about, where she makes multiples of herself and changes her appearance. So even though you're seeing two of her, that's the same person. And then the animals that she's riding are just extensions of herself. And I call this one Bending Light, because the background and what she's doing is she's changing it from day to night rapidly. Sometimes she does this to help the party members of the story. Sometimes she does things that seems like it's of a whim, but to the little girl, everything happens purposefully. She doesn't do anything arbitrarily or for no reason. And it's also another good example, a perfect example of the recycling thing. This is all stuff that I use in either art packing or digital printing. And it's cardboard, bubble wrap, there's some foam core underneath. It's just a Mod Podge of stuff that I had lying around at the time from doing printmaking.
Now, you brought up a great point, because we all used to art being a certain way, almost like art in a box. What is this type of art? Then there's a name for it. What's this type? There's a name for it. You are definitely right. This one is in the realm of everything you mentioned. It is part sculpture, because you have that multidimensional aspect of it. You are reusing different materials. Now, why do you feel that you must create like this? Why?
Oh man, there's a lot of reasons. I think a huge one for me that I think about even with not art, just everyday things, is the intrinsic value of an item. So what I mean by that is like something that was in the 80s that was $100 is now in a thrift store and you can't even sell it, right? So that cardboard, is that a high art material? Can you make it into a high art material? I like these questions. And okay, here's another perfect example. You take a dollar bill, you do this amazing drawing or amazing painting on it, and you sell that for $100. You've changed the value of that thing. Was it ever worth $1? Was it worth 2 cents? Was it always worth $100? I like these type of questions. Also, something like that specifically, these are items that are indicative to our time, right? 100 years ago, there wasn't cardboard like that. So you could almost date a piece like these by what materials I'm using, right? So something like vinyl or plexiglass, they weren't 100 years ago, and who knows what we'll have 100 years from now. So again, it's almost like you could track it. Now, whether or not that's super relevant to my concept, no, not really, but I do find it interesting and I like it. It's just something to think about. All these extra things are kind of what keep art exciting to me. And like, I could care less about like the zeitgeist and what people think is awesome and popular, right? But things like that kind of do it for me. And I don't know why, It's the same reason why we'll go into a museum and we'll see something that was made out of brass and we'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe these people made these brass intricate things, right? But that was just the standards of the time. And I'm sure that there will be things about our time 100 years from now that they look at and they go, oh my God, I can't believe they made this. This is wild, for the better or worse, Obviously I want to travel. I mean, I've been in Florida. I love Florida. It'll always be a part of me. And I want to kind of take that to other places. So, the obvious places like New York, LA, but then outside Beijing, Japan, pretty much all of Asia is like my thing, that if you can't tell, I have a lot of influences from the art styles. But yeah, European countries too, like Stockholm, there's a big art community. There's just a lot of places that I feel like I would benefit from. Like, yeah, obviously, like we always add to the culture of a place as artists, but every time I've gone on a residency and then come back, I feel like my art has grown exponentially. So I just need to keep doing that. I want to travel. I've always wanted to travel because that's art. That's what it's always been, And then there's some places that we can't go to because they're war-torn countries, but they're like meccas of art and art history, and it's just, to me, that's sad. I want to go to those places. And as far as like my imagery and my paintings, like what they are, what we talked about inside, where I want to just keep pushing the envelope of what is painting, what is sculpture. So painting more with light, you know, using reflections, using sound, using the viewer's interactivity. I'm not going to delve into it too much, but like a dream fantasy passion project are these things that I call puzzle houses. So I'll just leave it at that. But I just want to keep pushing it to these realms where people are like, what is art? You know, because that's kind of what we do. You know, back in antiquity, people thought that these objects were made by gods, you know, even though they were made by people. But that's what art does. It's when you look at a thing and you're just like, how did this exist? So I feel like in our time, it's even harder to do that. You can't just do that with imagery anymore. So it's thinking to the next level. I'm trying to do that, you know. Obviously, it'll have something to do with recycled materials because that's what I do. But more on that conceptual basis of like, what is painting, what is sculpture, what is installation, you know, and just keep pushing that.
The question of what is art, it is a puzzling question, especially now with technology. I dabble in coding a little bit, and it's endless the possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
You can create some magical pieces, and you never had a paintbrush in your hand, and you never had a canvas. So I do think, especially now more than ever, especially with us having all these gadgets in our pockets with all the filters, I do think that we are by default changing what art really is.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm interested in all of that, specifically talking about coding and programming and things like that. Just the internet is the endless, you know, river of content and stimulus, and where can that take us? And then video games, things like that. Like, you know, when things like video games or movies bridge that gap into art, it's undeniably art, whether or not people accept that. And we're kind of seeing that with comic books, because when we were growing up, you know, they weren't considered art, and now it's very obvious that it is. And I just like that, like things like, you know, fashion is art, right? But where does graphic design play that into that? Or like just things as simple as like graphic tees, you know what I mean? Because that's not what people would consider high fashion, but it's those things, taking something that is just a tool. It's a tool. So coding is a tool. The internet is a tool. What you do with it, that becomes the art. You know what I mean? At the beginning, I was really concerned with just being able to draw and paint well, you know, like I'm sure we all are. Like, you see something and you're like, I wish I could draw and paint like that. So that was the first step. Can I paint a figure? Can I draw anatomy? Can I draw perspective? All that boring stuff. And then once I felt like I got a good enough grasp of that, I did the next step, which is like, oh, I hate all of this. Let's just make crazy paintings that are like childlike, and then really diving into that childlike thing. So now I feel like where I'm at right now is trying to meet halfway between those two, to pair all the things that I feel that I've learned from the history of painting and techniques and all of that with my wild and crazy lucid side, I like to call it, where like I don't really think and I just throw it in there. So it's kind of like control but no control at the same time. Like right when I find myself getting out of control, I grab the wheel. You know, so that's I'd say where I'm at and where I will be for the rest of my life, probably, because I can't really see myself ever going back to either of those, where I'm just slopping paint around, or I'm gonna do this very you know, finely drawn portrait that's super hyper photorealistic. I don't really need to do that. I feel that's very much just it in a nutshell. Was like I needed to learn, that I needed to unlearn, and now I need to relearn both of them together. As like, I feel like that's just very human for us, you know. We're trying to do that even in our everyday lives, to like be an adult but be primal. So that's what I'm trying to do with art. Art in its basic thing to me is just a vessel for content. So it could be anything. It could be the deepest thing. It could be a one-liner. But I think if it doesn't have that, then it's not really art. And now you could say, oh, but what about decorative work? I still think decorative things can become art, just as I think graphic design can become art. Do I think it's all art? No. I think as humans, we know. Like, yes, we have preferences and we sometimes get caught off guard by our taste. We become too obsessed with our taste, and that kind of makes a filter of what we consider art. But I think anything can be, and I think it's very noticeable when it is. So something that's even, here's a perfect example, like a pot, right? Ceramic, pottery, that serves a function. So a lot of people would be like, no, that's not really art, right? But then why are there ceramic pots from Pompeii in museums? That's very obviously art. It's given a context. It has a context of the history, the time that it was made, and also the context of the catastrophe of that place. Oh my God, I can't believe we have this. Isn't that crazy? Now it becomes art. It's a vessel for content. Do you see what I'm saying? No pun intended, because it's a vessel. But you know what I'm saying. It's like, it's this camera, right? If you perfectly preserve it for 1,000 years, this camera will be art. You know?
It's funny you mentioned that. I collect 35 millimeter photography cameras, and I also have an 8x10. Those old fashioned.
Yeah, those are awesome.
So yeah, so in essence now those will become antiques. And
yeah, that's art to me. You know, and some people, me included, want to just look at those things. They don't need to use them. They don't need to serve a function anymore, even though they did. It becomes more than its function. At that point, it is a thing now. It's almost like a living thing. And I think that in a nutshell is what art is when you look at something and you're like, what is this? Why is this? And then it starts giving you feelings, whether they're good or bad. I'm not one of those people who think art needs to always make you uncomfortable or be questioning the status quo or blah, blah, blah. Like I said in there, I don't care really too much about the zeitgeist. It's more about, like, to me, a spiritual connection. Like, what makes us human and our connection to reality and the earth and all that stuff. You know, you could dive into that. But I think things like that do it. You know what I mean? These old cameras, you start thinking about the history of photography. You start thinking about, how did these people use this? I can't believe this actually made something. What were the photos that were taken? I would love to see those. I can't see them. They're gone. You'll never know. There's no track records. There's no nothing. But all of that is what makes it art to me. Seeing this and you were thinking, hey, should I paint? Even if you're gonna make kitschy Sunday paintings that are just of like a sunset, do it. Even if you're gonna do like a craft where you're gonna make glitter jars or make, you don't have money this year, so you're gonna make your family a bunch of holiday gifts, like do it. Do whatever the thing is that you're gonna do, because I feel like there's so much things in life that are trying to make us not do it. Even with you and I, who are very professional about it, there's still those walls that are very real, and we deal with it all the time, every day. So coming from somebody who deals with it and moves past it, do it. Whatever it is that you got to do it.